Dum dum bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Well, hello, and welcome, whoever, wherever, whenever you are, however you got here, whatever you're doing, why ever you're here. Thank you for showing up. I'm going to talk about something. I know someone out there is impatient because I said I was going to do this maybe about 2 weeks ago. It's a difficult thing because it has a lot to do with what happened to my daughter. I'm not going to talk about her case, but the setting, the background to what happened to my daughter is embedded in the Jewish invasion and takeover of Berkshire County, Massachusetts, which was very real. And I came across a video today. It's one of the reasons why it's difficult for me to talk about, because it sounds crazy. A lot of people are shutting this video off right now because they're saying, no, nothing like that could have happened. Well, I found a video. There's a channel called Static in the Attic. Most of this video, it's 21 minutes long. Most of it is theological. He's talking about the book of Judges, and he's talking about commands to the Jewish people globally, you know, sacred commands of how they were to behave, and, you know, he's expressing some opinions. The last 5 minutes of the video is all about organized campaign by Israel of Jewish people moving in an organized fashion into towns and taking them over. And we know this has gone on in, you know, that's one of the complaints of the Palestinians and other people in Israel, is that you have these settlers that go into Arab regions and neighborhoods and take it over and treat the Arabs, the non-Jewish Arabs, because Jews are Arabs, you know, they're all really part of that North African region. And I did speak in another video about a very interesting thing I noticed between Muslim and Jew, which seems to me like proof positive that they are not just two Abrahamic religions related to the heritage of Abraham. They're the same religion. They're worshiping something which is, you know, a black cube. And if you think that I'm wrong, a devout Orthodox Jew in prayer will wear an actual scale model of the Kaaba on his head. And it's supposed to represent some kind of spiritual protection while he prays. And if you look at it, and then you go look at the Kaaba and the videos that exist of the Mecca pilgrimage where Muslims go and circumnavigate that monument, you see that it is, in fact, that's what the Orthodox Jew is wearing on his head while he's deep in prayer. But anyway, that's not what this is about. I'm just pointing out a lot of stuff that we really have blinded ourselves to about this. But this thing of the settlers, okay, this guy, Static in the Attic, is talking about specific towns in Thailand and Cyprus, two very far distant global places where Jews have moved in and basically, you know, done what you might call a civilian invasion. And then, of course, they attack the indigenous population by calling us anti-Semites. And there's another thing, okay? I've often wondered, I used to wonder, why we kept that word anti-Semitic, which refers to being against all Middle Eastern people, Arab and Jew alike, not what should be said anti-Judaic. Well, now we understand why, because they're the same people. They've got the whole world fooled into thinking we have to pick one side or the other. They're the same people. And they're both doing the same thing. Global tyranny. But anyway, this thing about the real estate takeovers, go to Static in the Attic, and let me push this up and see if I can play a little bit of it for you. Let's see. Whoops.
They train hard.
Just a
they
minute.
look
We're
fit,
going to get an ad
but
for a
heart
second
attacks
here.
don't discriminate. Even the fittest...
Gone. Okay. All right, I want to move it up a little further here. Too far. Okay.
So these are 20...
Now you can read that. Wait a minute. Get rid of the ads. Okay. Can you? I'll get rid of the glare. It might be coming up backwards, but this is what it says is Israeli tourist boom sparks tension on Koh Phangan. It's a place in Thailand. Officials meet to describe foreign influence and community impact, and it is an article published in a Thai publication by someone named Puntid Tanti Vangfatsal. I'm sure I butchered it. I have no idea how you pronounce things in Thailand. But anyway, let me play it for you.
I've tried 3 different edits on the last attempt at this, which has completely wasted about 12 hours of my time, so I'm going to be real careful about this. So these guys have basically taken over towns here, and what they do is they'll find a local person and established businesses such as restaurants, villas, and tour companies targeting exclusively their people. And now over 90% of the shops and businesses on the island's west coast are ran by their people. And it appears that many of them come not just for tourism, but to settle and start communities here. They're buying up huge tracts of land and creating gated communities where the locals are...
Okay, that's exactly what they did in Great Barrington. And I can give you want to research it, you can research it through going through real estate records. Back in the 70s and 80s, mainly the 1980s, a land trust was set up by a Jewish group out of New York. The land trust straddles the Appalachian Trail over June Mountain. The Weinstein estate, yes, that Weinstein, is there, right on that. I used to live on June Mountain. When my daughter was in middle school, and partly when she was in high school as well, we had a lovely cabin on the side of June Mountain. Behind us was the Weinstein estate. Across the road was the Eisner Institute, which was owned by a Disney CEO. I don't know exactly what the story was. I don't think the Disney company had anything to do with it. I think it was like one of his things that he owned. But the Eisner Institute, EISNER, look it up. It's an Israeli. It's an American Jewish leadership training program that uses summer camps to indoctrinate their people. The same as if you go to Bibles. You go to summer Bible camp, okay? You're being indoctrinated in the non-denominational Christian, evangelical stuff. It's the same thing. And everyone's got a right to do it. Every community has the right to train their children up in their beliefs. I'm not objecting to that, but you do also have the right to notice what these camps are doing, especially when they're related to something like this land trust. I don't remember the name of the land trust, but it was set up to be so exclusively Jewish that when I sort of accidentally came into renting that cabin, there were a Jewish couple named Sheldon, and what was the woman's name? I can't remember the wife's name, but Sheldon and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Pascar, Pascar. They were managing that camp. I mean, they weren't in charge of the programs. They were like the house mother and father for the taking care of the camp and managing the staff and all that. And their daughter was in my daughter's class. So we knew each other as families. And they were surprised that, you know, we moved across. How did you rent that? She actually said to my face, Mrs. Paskar, actually said to my face, you're not Jewish. How did they rent to you? And I just took it as she was being an individual bigot, and I ignored it because everyone's got their bigotries. And when you're Catholic and ethnic, you get used to it. You just sort of let it roll off your back. And I just said, oh, I don't know. She was advertising it was for rent. And I actually wanted my niece to rent it because I had a place. My daughter and I had a place. But my niece was just moving up to Berkshire County from Boston. And so I told her I would find a place for her, and I found that. She freaked out. It was way out in the woods. It was like, no way was, you know, the Boston girl going to do that. So I told the landlady, well, my niece doesn't want it. Then the landlady, Mrs. Littow, Patricia Littow. That's another thing. I didn't even think about the Jewish stuff because the landlady didn't speak about being Jewish. Her name was Patricia, and she was from Tennessee. I mean, she didn't speak like native Tennessee. She spoke normal English, no accent from Tennessee, but she was from Tennessee. And she, when I told her my niece didn't want it, I thought it was beautiful, but my niece just wasn't going to be that rural. She knew about, Mrs. Littow had looked at, you know, that's the other thing. Jews, you say hello to a Jew, you're being background checked. And of course, when I was looking to rent from her, she had every right to background check all she wanted, get into the gossip networks and everything. And she found out I was a well-respected artist. I'd had exhibits. I was known in a nice way. And she said, well, she really wanted me to take it. And so we worked out an agreement. And then, of course, this thing with the Paskars. Now, the interesting thing about Susan and Sheldon, that was her name, Susan Paskar. The interesting thing about Susan and Sheldon is they were co-presidents of the PTO, the Parent-Teacher Organization. And there was a major scandal. I'll do a whole video about what happened. It was horrible. I took my daughter into home school for the end of 6th grade, for the last half of 6th grade, because of what happened. And it's very significantly part of this. Now, at the time, I didn't know that the neighborhood gossips and the bigotry and all that stuff was part of an organized American Jewish community colonization, destruction of the town of Great Barrington. But that's what it was, Berkshire County in general. And an interesting thing about the Weinstein estate, it was rented, or I don't know what the arrangement was, what the relationship was, but there was a couple. The man's name was Joseph Reich, R-E-I-C-H. I believe he's related to Robert Reich, the Clinton official. And the Reichs, Janet and Joseph Reich, were related to the Clintons. I mean, professionally related, not blood-kin related. Blood-kin related possibly to Robert Reich, definitely professionally related to the Clintons, who were very active in Berkshire County. Hillary Clinton was in Berkshire County all the time because she moved all her money through the arts programs in Pittsfield. So, and again, at the time it was going on, yeah, we're looking at corruption, we're looking at the Clintons, we're looking at politics. Nobody's looking at the American Jewish community for what they were doing. And there were all these individual conflicts with them at the PTO meetings, at the city, the town council, the town selectmen. Oh, they tried to mess up town meeting. Town meeting law at that time, Massachusetts used to be a old-fashioned kind of democracy. town meetings were official. You could only attend town meeting if you were a registered voter in the town who lived permanently in that town. I mean, you could have a house somewhere else, like you spend the winter in Florida or something, but that had to be your main residence from which you voted. See? And then you could attend town meeting, and everything the town meeting decided was the rule of law. The selectmen were only like the executive branch of the White House. They were only managing stuff. The decisions were made by all of the citizens at town meeting. And these New York Jews were angry because they didn't want to give up their official residence of New York, but they weren't allowed. They were angry that they couldn't participate in making laws in Great Barrington. It's like, no, you can if you move here permanently, if you declare this to be your home address. But they wanted, instead of recognizing that they had to make a decision, they tried to destroy the town meeting. And by now they probably have eradicated town meeting governments. But this invasion was highly strategic. As I said, the Clintons had a lot to do with that land. Harvey Weinstein, the Weinstein estate, Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett. Okay? So hold on a second, I gotta pause this. Okay. I'm not going to be able to stay on long because it's another reason why I didn't carry on with what I said I was going to do, because speaking kind of irritates my lungs. I don't cough as long as I'm just quietly being quiet. But it's an aftermath of dealing with toxic mold. I think I spoke about it in the video called My Art Tried to Kill Me. Yeah, I had a portfolio of old works on paper that developed toxic mold, and it's right, about 6 feet away from my bed. I had no idea it was putting that stuff into the air, and I was breathing it every night. But anyway, back to this takeover thing. Berkshire County was strategically identified, and Great Barrington in particular. Great Barrington is mentioned in a book by a Jewish author who was a professor at Clark University, a Jewish college in Worcester, Massachusetts. Professor Christine Summers, Christina Hoff, Hoff, Summers, Somers. And she wrote the book, Who Stole Feminism? And she's addressing the problem that feminism, she wrote this in the 80s, or I think she wrote it in the 90s, but it was about events in the 80s in Great Barrington. And she writes about the Maoist training and tactics that were being carried on in Great Barrington at Simon's Rock College. Now, Simon's Rock College is closed down. There's a war going on, and our side's winning. Yes, my Jewish friends, you need to make a decision. You're either American or you're Israeli, and if you're American, you need to back the hell off and respect our pluralistic, largely Christian society. Anyway, that's my opinion. But so if you go to which video did I talk about it in? Well, Simon's Rock Bard College, they're closing down. I was so glad when I did some research, did a little bit of Googling just to see what's going on up there now. Christina Hoff Summers wrote that book about the attacks on the math professor. The science and math were being identified as the targets for the feminist-trained youth attack groups. And Christina Hoff Summers, I think she was a professor of sociology or something related at Clark University. So she noticed right away, well, this is the Red Guard. This is Maoist youth revolution assaults on professors. And what they were doing was walking up to, doing the same thing they do to people now, the Antifa style. They were walking up to the targeted professors, surrounding them, and then they start screaming at them. Same thing they do to MAGA people. And they were targeting math and science. And it was going on at more than one college. But it was in the news, and if you do your research, I mean, if you can get past the paywall in some of these newspapers, you should be able to find stories. I believe the math professor's name was something like McFarland. Something like that. And the science professor, there was a guy I think I want to name who was actually Persian, which means he and his wife were from Iran, but were not Muslim and were not Jewish, because they referred to themselves as Persian. And but I don't think he was the one they attacked. There was a science professor who was also attacked. And McFarland, or the name that sounds like that, I'm not going past the Berkshire Eagle paywall to get at these stories. I know the stories are there. But the math professor went to the media and spoke up about it, how this was affecting him. They were trying to put a stop to it. There was a lot of stuff going on. Simon's Rock. Now, Simon's Rock, if you can picture this, here's June Mountain where my house was. You go down the hill into town and then up another hill. Simon's Rock about college. Keep going a little bit past Simon's Rock, and there was an institute. And it was all owned, the institute and Simon's Rock Applied College was owned by a CIA-connected group, family, called the Halls. And it was very interesting situation. Everyone knew about that compound being a CIA compound. At the time that I was living there, I was dating a man who we were together for about 3 years. He had been a career Air Force guy, pilot, and he had been a pilot in the Secret War of Laos. He'd been a pilot all through Vietnam, and he had stayed in Southeast Asia for the years after Vietnam because he finally completed his 20 years career after October 7th. No, it was October 4th, 1987. There was a major blizzard. That's why I remember it. And he came back in the weeks following. And we met and, we formed a love affair. One of the things that happened, and I will tell a video about that relationship because it's important. It's not only just personally interesting, but it's important to the rest of the story because of his background. Extremely intelligent guy. And his parents were also artists. That's how I came to know the family, because I had been a studio assistant working with his father in the aftermath of his mother's death. She died of cancer. She had been a school teacher in the public school system, an art teacher. And she was well known as part of the same art colony that I was well known as being part of. So it was like we were all in the same community. In fact, my family used to buy Christmas. His father ran a Christmas tree farm, and they had art activities going on all the time and so on. And my family used to buy some of those Christmas trees. But anyway, when he moved back, and he moved into the middle of this invasion. Now, he's a military guy. He started to notice things. He was asking me out. That was part of the way our relationship came to be, was he started picking my brain about what's going on here. And he's going through the transition from military with a lot of combat background, not hand-to-hand combat on the ground, but airplane stuff. And he's going through the difficult transition to civilian life. He starts dealing with PTSD, and it was very interesting. I will tell the story. But as he began to recover, part of what he was dealing with was he was looking around and he was seeing these things happening and getting told by other adults, no, that's not happening, this silly guy. And I'm like, oh, no, this is this. Now, he decided, and his name, now I'm not going to say his name here. His first name was Pete. I'll do that because I know I'm going to slip out and say the name anyway, so I will just say Pete. So Peter was his name. He decided he had to just get back to work. He couldn't just, deal with the farm work and, personal relationships and everything. So he went down to Hartford, to the federal building in Hartford, and he went through some tests and interviews to see what kind of job with the federal government he might be fitted out for as a veteran with his 20 years honorable service. And he found work as a DIA, Defense Investigative Service. It's not the same as DIA. DIA is Defense Intelligence Agency. They're like CIA, but they're military. DIS does background checks to see if somebody can get a security clearance. And Pete took the job of doing the background checks for job applicants at GE, where my sister was executive secretary. See how it gets interesting? That's one of the reasons why he started ticking my brain, because he started to make the connections and say, whoa, what's going on here? And a lot of the connections, really, I never made till after I moved to Texas and was able to look at it all from the outside. Some connections you can't see when you're too close to them. When you're in the situation, you're just dealing with it. And then when you get away from it and look back, you say, oh my goodness, this one and that one and da-da-da-da. I mean, like this video by Static in the Attic. Who's going to connect what's going on in Thailand and what's going on in Cyprus with what went on in Great Barrington? You have to be sitting outside and looking at it from a great distance to make that connection. The other person that was involved with this, they were bringing in the attacks. I spoke in another video about the arrest of the Interlaken art school teacher. All this stuff was being run through art programs. The funding, the money laundering, the Clinton corruption was all being done through National Endowment of the Arts funding. And they were promoting a lot of the horrific death porn, sexual pornography aimed at children, the death art, like what the Podesta stuff. That was all heavily involved with the art. I mean, we normal artists were at war, but we were just relating it to as those New Yorkers, I mean, look what's going on in New York. We didn't relate it to the American Jewish community as such. Many did, but they were, for the most part, not part of. They were blue-collar people who were looking at the politics and didn't understand the artistic side. And those of us who understood the artistic side, most of us were too liberal to make the connection. I was a rare bird in that regard. I was not too liberal. I had a lot of union background because of my dad and my uncles and the Irish politics of my family. I had the union background to make the connections. And this invasion involved Alan and Roselle Shartok. Alan Shartok was a commentator and columnist. He was a columnist for the Berkshire Eagle. He was a radio show host for NPR Public Radio in Albany. And he used his position to attack and troll private individuals. I mean, he viciously, week after week, attacked a retired waitress, Priscilla. I don't remember her last name. But he was attacking her because she owned real estate. In her years as a waitress, she had managed to pick up a couple of old houses, fixer-uppers, and because she was a waitress, she could get guys to go and do some of the work to fix it up, and the next thing you knew, she had a house that she could sell or remodel. You know, she rented space out. She had things converted into apartments so that she could retire and live off the rentals. And the New York Jews, of course, they look at real estate. You know, they'll walk right up to you in your own yard and try to make you feel like you don't belong there. I told that story in another video, too, of how a couple of them walked up to me when I was sitting out in the yard just enjoying this. And then that thing that Susan Pascar said to me, how come she rented to you if you're not Jewish? And I'm like, I don't know. Why shouldn't she? And she kind of backed off because I challenged her. And then there was quite a lot of stuff going on with the crooked, corrupt politics of the Pascars using their position at Eisner Institute to run the PTO meetings to attack Great Barrington's families. The Pascars themselves were originally from Boston. And so, you know, a lot of it seems like, just like what goes on in YouTube, people think these trolls are just, you know, incels with nothing better to do. And it takes a while to track through and notice little clusters of trolls who are highly professional. There's that Jewish guy, Gabe Hoffman, $80 million real estate kind of guy. He flipped one piece of real estate to Larry Ellison, of all people. He had bought it for $20 million, and within a few months sold it to Ellison for $80 million. He's living the life, right? And yet he's active among the thugs and brain-dead creeps and perverts of Sewertown. That's the group that if you want to really be disgusted, look up somebody named Blazin Scar. Blazin apostrophe Scar, Scar. She runs a channel where she likes to call these people out on what they're doing. And she runs a lot of clips of all the different troll channels that are related to Sewertown, that are related to Gabe Hoffman. She's looking at the Jewish community as well. And she's getting heavily attacked for it. My first encounters with her were way back in 2017. They were not good because at that time she was entangled with these trolls. Didn't really see the game for what it was. But she learned what it was. And she came back. She came back fighting. And God bless her for the work she's doing now. Just like, you know, anyone could point at, well, people did point at me. Why did I move out there knowing that was the Jew camp? That's what the people in Great Barrington called Eisner Institute, the Jew camp. In that whole neighborhood. Everyone knew the Jews were taking that whole area over. But they didn't care, because people were kind of used to having their own little enclave. And the question to me was, why did I move there? Because I knew that was where all the Jews lived, and I'm not Jewish. And I said to my friends, I love the house. It's a beautiful place. Why should the Jews have it? Excuse me. I have to call it a night, but I'll be back. God bless you. Denise Matteau, over and out.